Views and opinions expressed are those of the host and
You're listening to talktainmentradio.com.
the views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of talktainmentradio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is All in Our Family, heard on talktainmentradio.com. And I'm Ash Yolanda Robinson. And this is radio the way it should be heard. Listening audience, on the show today, we have the activists, the real activists. I mean, they've been activists for years, over decades, working on the police issue. And I have in the studio Tyrone Thomas, who is the president of the Community Civilian Board here in Columbus, and James Moss, who was with the Police Officers for Equal Rights, who filed a lawsuit with the police department about some of the issues that were going on. James Moss, you filed a lawsuit. How are you doing today first? How are you doing, James? James? Okay. Is James? James?
Yeah,
Okay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great today.
Oh, that's fine. But then you filed a lawsuit with the City of Columbus Police Department. What made you file that lawsuit? What actually happened that made you file the lawsuit with the police department?
What made me file a lawsuit is that I came to the police department in 1970. I was involved in two other lawsuits. One was the Haney versus Chester, which made a dissent decree to a court system to hire more blacks. Then Eula Bryant lawsuit versus City to hire women as police officers. And after that, we filed a lawsuit, police officer equal rights in 1976, and it was heard in 1985, and this remedy was done in 1987. It was against discrimination in hiring rules where the black officers couldn't work in certain places, and also promotions, and out of that, I was one of the officers got promoted. But in 1995, I went to a National Black Police Convention in Atlanta, and I met with a lawyer at the United States Department of Justice. We sat down and talked about 2 hours, and I was explaining to her what was going on in our police department. She said I had a good lawsuit, and for me to give them documents so they could follow up. Well, I came back, and I asked for police records, and Chief Jackson denied me records. So I filed a lawsuit. And while I was filing that lawsuit, Chief Jackson ordered Commander Burns to come in headquarters about 2 o'clock in the morning and start destroying police records to try to circumvent our lawsuit. We got an injunction from the Supreme Court to stop Chief Jackson destroying records, and then we won our case for public records. And the significance of this case made it that all citizens in the state of Ohio could access police records. Before that time, the police were starved and give you records. So what I did, I took a petition, and then Michael Fair, we stayed downtown for in the winter months, we had a petition on a letter about violating constitutional rights and then legal activities of the police department. We got over 3,000 signatures. I did interviews. With citizens, and I made 6 to 8 trips to D.C. with these interviews that I tape recorded, and I gave it to the Justice Department, and they talked to me, and I took over 3,000 documents with me on those trips I went to the Justice Department. So they finally found a lawsuit against Columbus in 1997, and the lawsuit stated that the Columbus Police Department was engaged in illegal use of force, illegal arrest, illegal search and seizure, and violations of numerous civil rights laws against African American citizens.
Oh, my goodness. Now,
yes.
Ooh. And you know what? I was going to ask you, was anything accomplished? It seems like the only...
Well, it was... This is what happened. in 1999, the lawsuit came before the Columbus Police Department. The official lawsuit was issued in 1999. Well, at that time, I was dealing with the Clinton administration. So when the Bush administration came in, he appointed John Ashcroft, who was a racist bigot from Missouri, for the Justice Department. Janet Jackson, Mayor Coleman stopped this lawsuit. What they did, they made trips to D.C. and they begged Ashcroft to release him from the lawsuit, and the basis that the consent decree that I drew up with the Justice Department, the things that I put in there, that they would do it voluntarily without a lawsuit and without the consent decree. Because Ashcroft was his bigot, he let the city off the hook. And what happened was they did not honor anything in that lawsuit. One thing I put on there was, number one, was the Citizen Review Board. I had written a paper, I had did workshops throughout the United States about a Citizen Review Board. They did not implement that. I also said that all complaints should not go on the police department. They should go through the Citizen Review Board. They didn't do that. I also put in there that all police cars, marked and unmarked, should have cameras installed. They didn't do that. So there's a list of things that me and Attorney John Waddy, we made a grocery list of things that we wanted. And we also put about criminal charges being filed on police officers who violated the civil rights law and other laws. And Janet Jackson didn't do anything. And let me say this, for his history, we had a black chief, a black safety director, Chief Jackson, Michael Coleman. We had Janet Jackson, of course, a city attorney. Majority of the city council members were black. The reason we had this problem today because they failed to empower the black community. They didn't do anything while they were in office to change the culture of the Columbus Police Department. And this is why we're back where we are today, because they failed. As a matter of fact, Jackson said there was no discrimination. He said there was no reconciling. He filed 2 lawsuits while he was chief for discrimination. But when black police officers filed complaints through the police department for discrimination, he dismissed all of them and said there's no discrimination. So it only was discrimination when it affected him. And he had all police black officials and officers change the whole process. I was the city council, and they asked all the city councilors what they sign off on federal consent. They did not sign off on that.
Wow. Tyrone, do you? They didn't file anything, and they just kind of let things go.
No, they didn't do anything.
Yeah. So I was going to ask Tyrone, does it seem like we're back at the same table over and over again? We keep, because even before he filed a lawsuit, I worked with the Stubblefield case. We asked for a civilian review board, and that was never done. Now you're president of a civilian review board.
I'm the president of the South in Atlanta. He stuck the class of all police officers. None of my black police officers compared. After I lost, 1992, our policy, he continued that policy by he could our attorney to continue quota system and encourage the operation based on. So what happens is that
your phone is going in and out. Are you on the speakerphone?
No, I'm on a regular cell phone.
Now it's kind of like, but your phone was going in and out. So,
Okay.
And so, it was kind of like we couldn't hardly hear you because it was going in and out. So you were saying that even after.
Yeah. So what happened was, with this whole thing was that they didn't follow up. I mean, Mayor Coleman they said they couldn't find our attorney. I'm telling you how Judge Graham, a federal racist judge, lied. Our attorney was Curlin Watts. At the time when he said he could not find her, she was a safety director of Cleveland, Ohio. Wow. That's all he had to do was pick up the phone and call her.
Uh-huh.
So they stopped it. But Mayor Coleman and Janet Jackson, they knew where she was.
Mm-hmm.
But we could have had a quota system today to mandate Columbus Park blacks based on the U.S. Census. But Mayor Coleman and Janet Jackson refused to do it, and like I said, everything we wanted in our lawsuit, they didn't do anything. So I blame the situation of the Columbus Police Department, the racism, and the problems. The police culture was protected by Chief James Jackson, and also Mayor Coleman and Janet Jackson, and the black city council members who did not do anything to improve the police culture of the Columbus Police Department to let this develop into a great big cancerous growth of racism. And that's where we are today, because their failure when they were in the office, they did not do anything.
So you said it doesn't make any difference. What you're telling me, it doesn't make any difference what the color of the skin is of individuals.
No, it doesn't.
So when you're advocating for a black chief or city councilman, the gender and the color of the skin is not that as critical as it is. The issue.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Now
what we have to understand, Robinson, is that just because you're black, and you're not doing the right thing, you're hurt as worse as a white person. And what Jackson did, he found out, he knew who all the POR members were. He filed departmental charges to intimidate and harass all the black POR members. He filed petitions, charges on him. He tried to get some fired. And let me give credit to where Larry James, who was safety director, he saved so many black police officers' jobs. I could go to talk to Larry James and tell him the truth. And so when the chief packet came over, he would not do anything with it. So I saved a lot of black police officers' jobs because Larry James had an open door policy. He believed what I was saying. And he saved a lot of black police officers' jobs that Chief Jackson was trying to farm. And what makes it worse is Chief Jackson is chief. He fired more black officers. He found more charges on black officers than any chief in the history of the police department. White chiefs. He was the worst chief when it came for black discipline. And Larry James agreed that he was unfair in disciplining white officers compared to black officers.
So he made it harder on
He made it harder on black officers, and he retaliated against POER members.
Oh my goodness! Now Tyrone, it looks like we're Tyrone Thomas with the Civilian Review Board, but you're not. The review board you have is not appointed.
No, we're the Columbus Civilian Community Board, which is a group promoting the standards. We put together standards, and we get ready to teach classes. Same thing as with POER. We Police Officer Equal Rights. James is president of that. We're getting ready to start what to do when you get stopped by the police, and hold workshops and classes on that. But speaking about the Civilian Review Board, we are in a process as a city doing a study.
When you say we, who is that?
Well, I'm talking about the leadership of the city is doing a study on a Civilian Review Board. They have all that information. We've been at this table. I sat at the table with John Waddy and Kevin Boyce 30 years ago with the city of Minnesota, who's going through all the problems they're going through. and they implemented one, but it didn't have any power. It didn't have subpoena power. It didn't have investigative power. It couldn't bring in officers in. And as the FOP in this city said, the city's talking about a civilian review board, but they're not at the table. And the reason they're saying they're not at the table is because they don't allow oversight of their officers. They don't want individuals looking at their officers in a way that it can be disciplinary. So this city has really gone backwards. They're not going forward. They're going backwards because they put in what's called a CIT team, community engagement team, which is still operating inside the department, but it's not doing what they said it was going to do. And the same thing with the lawsuit. James, the consent decree listed things that are still being done today that was listed back in 1997, 98, and they haven't been done. You heard the mayor say the other day, well, we're going to put cameras on all the officers, including internal affairs and the detective. Well, you should have did that in the beginning.
Yes.
And then we wouldn't have had the question of breaking up the squad because they didn't know what they were doing, and a young lady lost her life because of that. So I guess when you speak to racism, there's your racism throughout the department, throughout the prosecutor's office, throughout the state house and the U.S. House, the Ohio House of Representatives. No one is passing anything concrete, any legislation to stop this.
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing you saying, that we may be back to the same thing. Our grandkids and our kids may be doing the same thing a few years ago, if anything, because nothing has gotten done.
Well, I would say we're worse than we were in the 30s and the 40s.
Oh my
God! When we were targeted. Now we're not only targeted, we're tracked down and lied to. The department kills someone. And there's a whole bunch of people coming together to cover that up, including the prosecutor's office, including the courts. Because the courts have a job in this too. The courts don't have to take a case and let it be a bad case. They're not bad cases, they're cover-up cases. IA, Internal Affairs, should not be investigating police officers. That's why you need a citizen review board. And that citizen review board has to be totally independent of the city leadership and should not have city people appointed to it. No, the mayor, nobody shouldn't be appointing people to a civilian review board. It should be totally independent. They need to fund it, because it's taxpayers' money and it's there to protect taxpayers.
Well, how would they be appointed? I mean, how would they be on the board?
Let me interject, Ms. Robinson. The consent, the citizen review board that I gave to them in 1997, I had a plan, and I think Tyrone has a copy of the plan. And one of the things we said that you could set up the zones and districts like voting zones, and we would have like 11 different districts, and each of those persons would run for the citizen review board. So they would serve like a 4-year term, and that's why I had it. So for each segment of the city would be represented by a person that lived in that area, but the board would be 24/7. There would be a president of that board and some staff workers. When anytime a person filed a police report by telephone, by text, or by email, they would handle that complaint. And that citizen review board would take that complaint. And also, I put that any police shootings, any police use of force, police shootings that result in death or seriously injury, or automobile chase that results in serious death or injury, that would be investigated by the BCI. The police would investigate. The only thing the police would do would just secure the crime scenes, and the BCI, the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, would do all the investigations. So you have an outside person coming in doing the investigation. Right now, the you have what you call a firearms board of police department. They do their own investigation of any police-involved shooting, and that is ridiculous.
Could be a buddy system,
you know, they're investigating themselves.
Yeah.
So we need to do away with that whole process.
Yes, an outside review. Now, there's another proposal to defund the police. What is your opinion on that?
Well, defund the police is not act. It could be do two ways. Number one, you could dismantle the whole police department, and you can ask the Franklin County Sheriff Department to take over the policing in the city of Columbus. Some cities have done that. Or
has that been successful?
Yes, that's an example. Another way you could do that is that what you do is that you defund the police department, you bring in a new chief and a new administrative, and they hire policemen. That means that if you're on the police department, your job will be abolished. You have to come apply for the job. They look at your past records and all like that to try to weed out the bad apples. That's another way. And also another way is to fund the police department. Say if you have a domestic and there was no weapon involved, two people arguing, you would have a social worker who's trained in that would go to that house and try to solve the situation. So the funds of the police department, their budget, will be diverted onto the Franklin County Children's Service or some type of
domestic
counseling service that will provide that service. So you would defund the policeman, meaning that part of that money you get to the police budget would go to that area to have other people get involved in runs where the police really didn't have to come to be there.
Well, you know, and then there's a lot of things going on here. I understand people are calling to fire the chief of police, to fire the mayor. Now, you said that it didn't, you know, the color of the skin and those things don't make any difference because the more things change, the more they stay the same. So would that make a difference, just firing the chief and
no,
the mayor?
Well, Ms. Robinson, they had an opportunity. I looked at it, the whole process of picking the chief. The only way they should have picked the black candidate who was, I think he was from Maryland or somewhere. He had no ties with the police department. He was the vehicle that the Columbus police could use to stop the good old boy system, the blue code of silence. That buddy system could have been stopped, but what they did, they hired a person within, and the chief now, he was one of his buddies involved in a shooting, and so he had to call somebody else in because that was his fishing buddy. So this, what you need to do is do not hire nobody in. You hire a outside person outside the Columbus Police Department to come in. You give him 5 deputy chiefs or 4 deputy chiefs that he can bring into his executive board, and they will be over, say, the other deputy chiefs are already hired there, they will be over them so he can do his own police department. Because if you just bring in a police chief from outside, you keep the same deputy chief with the same power, you won't be able to change the police department. Most police departments, like Atlanta and other cities, when you hire a chief, that chief is able to bring in his own executive officers to implement his plan. That's what must occur in Columbus. Just getting an outside chief, no, the outside chief must have the ability to bring in his own people who he wants to bring in to implement a new change of policy. And that cannot be done if they don't change that. And as far as the present chief, he's a part of the culture. He's been on the police department all his life. I mean, his career. He knows the people. He knows the buddy system. He's part of the FOP. He supports them. So all that has to go out of the window to start a better police department.
And the current chief spoke during the interview process that they had over at East High School. He spoke to his fact that he has loyalty to the FOP as a former member and because he has so many acquaintances and relationship with them. And we know that the FOP is part of the problem with the type of policing that we have in this area. I just heard Farrell, who's the president of the FOP, said that they don't train in using the chokehold because you can shoot them. In other words, he was saying we don't train you in using the chokehold because we can just pull out a gun and shoot you. And so that's the kind of mentality that we don't need, and it needs to stop because we know that in this city the only people they're shooting and killing is black folks. And so you have to take his word for what it was. No chokehold, just pull your gun out and shoot him. And in 2011, Mayor Coleman said the same thing. If you show us a gun, we're going to shoot you. And that's what this police department has practiced real hard since 2011. You show them a gun, stick, a rake, a bat, a machete, a knife, they're going to shoot you.
Okay.
And also, racist organization. When we filed our lawsuit back in 1976, they spent over $1 million of our union funds to join the city against us. Okay, the black officers. So I'm saying, here I am, a union paying member, and they paying money to go against us. They supposed to represent us. So we had to pay our own pockets. But after that, I POER took it to Ohio Department of Labor Board. We said, here's this union, did not give us one dime in a lawsuit, so why should we have to pay union fees to them? They did not represent us. They got on the side of the city of Columbus against their own black members. Well, the Ohio Department of Labor, the racist organization themselves, they ruled against us and said that we had to pay all the union dues all but $1. That was our fair share, all but $1. So that's another example how the FOP, they have never helped black officers. They have never came out and said they're against racism or discrimination, and they have never did that. Like I said, they came against us, and then when I filed a lawsuit in 1995, they joined the city and went to D.C. and lobbied against getting out a consent decree. And Janet Jackson said,
we only have
can't
about a
do
few more
anything
minutes
without the FOP on this consent decree. That's what she said. So they lobbied along with the citizens, with the city of Columbus to get out of the lawsuit.
Yes. Now, before we close, name one city in the country that has good police-community relations. Can you name one?
No.
I think if you want to look at, I think it's Camden, New Jersey, who defunded their police department and got the county to come in. I'm pretty sure
that would probably be the one.
They're doing pretty good.
They're doing
pretty good with the police department. I'm thinking, I may be wrong, but I know it's a city in New Jersey. They defunded the police department and they had brought in the county. And they're doing excellent, and they have a strong citizen review board.
Oh my goodness! So you know what? It's time for me to go. I really thank you. I wanted to talk more and get some. I had to bring you back on because there was so much I wanted to ask you. But I'd like to thank you and Tyrone for taking your time to be on this week's show of All in Our Family. And I'll see you next week. Love you.